All right, Christina, you know I live on the internet. I'm working on my phone addiction this year. It's one of my resolutions. But because of that, I get to see all the great videos on social
TikToks.
media before anyone else. And usually they make me angry and they rile me up. But I stumbled across one that made me laugh and brought me a little bit of joy. It's a little bit dark, but I think you're going to enjoy it. Can we play it?
Let's do it.
All right, roll that clip.
I have thousands of dollars in gambling debt that you would all probably call student loans. But I like to look at that as me betting on myself and losing.
A brilliant comedian, just perfect timing and delivery, and such a beautifully dark analogy about student loans.
I couldn't decide whether to laugh or cringe.
Well, you're a
That's
better
like-
person than me. I immediately laughed. That's just straight up. And it's coming from a comedian, so clearly she doesn't take herself too seriously.
But
the analogy,
there's also
though,
reality to that.
think about this. But then I was like, oh, the student loan companies are like the Vegas casinos. And they're inviting you in with open arms, saying you can win big. And she's saying, I'm betting on myself. And the funny thing is, the house always wins, don't they? The student loan companies always win.
That's just so sad.
It's
And
dark.
also, I
know.
I'm allowed to laugh at that, right?
Yes. Gosh, Christina, live a little.
just-
Live, laugh, persevere. We all know how the saying goes.
It's funny, but it's also so true.
So
cringe.
that brings me to my next point. There's this article from Yahoo. Here's the headline. Get this. Meet the 30-year-old with $110,000 in student debt who chose her jobs in hopes of public service loan forgiveness, but her balance just keeps growing. Like a fungus. This woman, Kirsten Lane, she's 30 years old, and she had undergraduate, graduate degrees, went into a career in the nonprofit sector, in theory, to get the forgiveness, which in reality didn't quite work out.
The elusive forgiveness. And she says, I never miss a payment, always on time, and yet my balances never go down. I would understand how people can't see that there's something wrong with this picture.
And here's the crazy part. She obviously, I guess, found out this program is riddled with flaws, the Public Student Loan Forgiveness Program. So she paused that strategy for that 10-year program to take a marketing agency job in the private sector with a salary that brings her much closer to the $90,000 the federal government estimated she would need to afford to pay back the debt. Goodness gracious.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because she said she went to her dream school counting on forgiveness. So basically, like that little carrot that was dangled of forgiveness actually affected which school she chose.
And what career she chose.
Right. But she actually went to a more expensive school because she was counting on that forgiveness.
When you're like, why does it matter? They're going to forgive it no matter the cost.
Oh,
Until they don't.
Until they don't. Well, and that's what's kind of, obviously, man, this gets me fired up. But it's like, this is what is so scary about this conversation about forgiveness. And all of these students who are going to school, who are looking to go to college, is that now going to make them pick more expensive schools because they think someday they're going to get their loans forgiveness, or it's going to be capped? There's income-based repayment. So I might as well borrow $300,000 because I'm only going to pay 5% of my salary.
If you're out to dinner and a generous person is like, hey guys, I'm covering the dinner, get whatever you want, you're not getting the cheapest thing on the menu, right?
No.
You're going to get an appetizer, you're going to get the steak, maybe some dessert, maybe a cocktail. And that's kind of how it is with these student loans in the forgiveness program. They're just going, I'm going to go to whatever my dream school is, at whatever the cost is, and the monopoly money, well, that's for someone else to worry about. And it just doesn't pan out like that in reality. And no one makes the money they thought they would make because, by the way, to get the forgiveness, you've got to be in the public sector, which, by the way, pays less on average than the private sector. And so you get stuck in these rhythms, and she calls it a catch-22 in the article. And she goes on to say, I was paying $300 until the pandemic hit, and I think for 3 or 4 years, my balances never went down. They always went up.
Well, and that alone is a bit problematic because with a $110,000 balance, paying $300 a month with the balance going up, that means you're just paying interest. You're not really tackling the principal.
Well, it must mean the interest is high enough and the payment is low enough that you're not making any progress on that balance. And when I hosted the Borrowed Future podcast series we did, I talked to Terry, who had $15,000 of student loan debt that ballooned up to $60,000 decades later as life hit her and she struggled. And she was suicidal. It was so sad talking to her and hearing her heart going, I was worth more dead than I was alive.
That is sad.
And so many people feel this way when it comes to student loans. They're going, I was told that this was going to be the best thing for me. The guidance counselors, the student loan companies, the marketing, it's all saying, we're investing in your future. And like that comedian said, I bet on myself and I lost. That's what it feels like when it comes to student loans.
Well, and that's kind of the way they sell it too, is it's like, it's good debt. It's good debt. It's how you advance. It's necessary. Everybody's doing it. It's not.
And
it's just not.
This quote from her in the article sums it up. The hardest thing is that I trusted in the system that I was told from a very young age was going to be my path to prosperity, or a decent, not exorbitant, but a decent middle-class life where I could give back to the community that helped raise me and supported me. And and she said, it feels like a big broken promise now. And that describes the entire college system, student loan system that we find ourselves in today. And we covered this in depth in the Borrowed Future documentary, which is now free on YouTube. And Christina, you were featured in that, kind of showing the other side of saying, hey, you don't have to go down this path. You can go to college debt-free. It's possible.
It is possible. I won over $500,000 in scholarships. My mom gave me a challenge my freshman year of high school and basically said, you're on your own paying for college. But at the same time, I expect you to go to college and, expect you. She's an immigrant from Venezuela. And so she was like, I worked to get this far. Now you got to take the baton further. So how are you going to get scholarships? How are you going to go to school debt free? And that really encouraged me to start hustling. I did a ton of volunteer work in high school. I did a ton of extracurricular activities. And then I treated the scholarship application process like a part-time job my junior and senior year. And so it is possible, but you got to take student loan debt off the table. We have to, get it through to students that that's not the way. When there's no debt on the table, when that is not an option, you're going to get creative and find ways. And it's so interesting. People have talked to me and they're like, Christina, you must have been anti-debt, when you were in high school. But at the time, honestly, I didn't even know that I could get student loans. Thankfully, my mom being from Venezuela was a benefit for us. They handle debt a bit differently there. So I didn't realize that I could take out student loans. I thought if I didn't have enough cash to pay for college, if I didn't find a way to pay for it, that I couldn't go to school. So that really motivated me to figure out how to win scholarships and to get myself out there. But taking debt off the table, it just really encourages you to be strategic and to figure out different ways. And, something else I'm pretty concerned about over the next year that I think people need to be really mindful of is there's a lot of changes happening right now with public student loan forgiveness. And this program has already, it's misled a lot of people over the last several years. I think it was like 2% of people who applied for the program actually got their debt forgiveness. There's been some waivers recently. They're saying there's some full things going into effect in June. It's all still TBD. There's a lot kind of out there. So I think it's just important to encourage students to still go to school debt free. I mean, it's all the forgiveness stuff, right?
Yes.
It sounds so beautiful. It sounds so attractive. But then you have stories like Kirsten's where she's $110,000 in debt, still waiting to see if it's going to happen and just getting frustrated. So y'all, you are the solution to your problems. You can go to school debt-free. You can be strategic. You can win scholarships. You can go to a tuition assistance program. You can go to a community college. There are so many ways to get educated that do not involve debt. So take it off the table.
There is hope to be found, and it's in the mirror. It's not in the federal government. It's not in the next bill. It's not at the White House. You're not going to find it there. It's right there in the mirror, and this is the year you can start to make progress on that debt, become debt-free, and we want to show you how to do that. I got out of $36,000 of student loan debt, and you can too, America. You can do this, but it takes deciding that your hope is not going to be found anywhere else but that mirror. You got this.